Hey folks, welcome to this week's Booth Mini Gathering. I realize you might be watching this at another time, but during the week where I'm making this video, Booth is in the middle of a week-long campaign to raise our awareness about sexual violence, what it is, the issues that surround it, how we can better respond to it. And we want to do that for a few reasons. We want to do that because this affects all of us. This is something that I'm reluctant to say it, but it's something we're surrounded by. And that's the fact of the matter. And it's something that kind of gets at our root of who we are as human beings. So that's where I want to start. I want to start by talking for a few minutes about some thoughts about how we value ourselves as human persons. And this is sort of basic stuff. It's kind of at the bottom of the pyramid. And if we can get some of these kind of things squared away, that can really help us to better understand sexual violence, and it can help us respond to it more constructively. Whether that's by way of standing against it, so we resist it, when it's coming into environments that we're in, or whether it's coming against us directly. It can also help us to listen better to people who've been victims of it or who are concerned they may be. And it can help us respond more constructively if we have been a victim of sexual violence. So this is kind of the stuff that is at the heart of the matter, I think. I'm going to be speaking to this from the tradition that I'm most familiar with in terms of spiritual and religious traditions, which is the Christian tradition. If that's not your tradition, stick with me. I think you'll find that the values are big, basic, human ones that apply to everybody, whether you ground them in this tradition or whether you ground them somewhere else. There are lots of reasons why sexual violence happens. There's lots of theories about why it happens. There's lots of theories about why the perpetrators that perpetrate it do so, why they act out the way that they do. I'm not going to get into those complexities today. I want to focus on a couple of the values that almost all of those theories have in common. And the most prevailing one that they all have in common is the value that says that sexual violence is not okay. It's not okay in any of its forms. And that means it's wrong. That's important in itself. It's also important because it points to a positive value. If sexual violence, if violent ways of relating to one another sexually are wrong, then there are ways of relating to one another as sexual beings that are right, that are good, that are lovely. That's where I want to kind of focus our attention for the next few moments. When I think about some of the most essential Christian notions of what it means to be human that feel applicable to this intersection, the one that comes most strongly to mind is the notion that as people, as human beings, we have dignity and worth. Christianity teaches that we're made in the image of God, that we're image bearers of the divine, that we're made by God to be like God. One of the reasons that sexual violence is not okay is because it ignores the reality that each of us, by the generosity of God, has been given the same worth as God. Now, if we relate to one another in ways that ignore that reality, if we power up in ways that ignore that, it's going to result in broken ways of relating. It's going to result in human interactions that are not okay, that are not well. And that's especially true when it comes to our sexuality, because that's a really important part of how we express who we are as human beings. We arrive in the world bearing the gift of dignity, and we arrive in the world bearing the gift of sexuality. However we identify that, or however we perform that in our lives, it is a gift from God. The Hebrew stories that underpin the Christian understanding of this make that really clear, that our sexuality is a gift from God and it should be respected the way any other divine gift should. That means, at a minimum, that our sexual boundaries should be respected. No one should be sexual with us unless we, as free, consenting adults, want them to be. And not just want them to be, but we've clearly communicated that we want them to be. So now we're into a conversation about consent, which is a whole other thing that's worth exploring and learning about, but we're not going to pursue that today. Free acts of intimacy about two people who care for one another and who want to be there for one another, those are the kind of things that can help relationships gravitate toward things like tenderness and warmth and the kind of fulfillment that fosters commitment. These are the kind of values that make our relational worlds feel like safer places, that help us to feel like we've got somebody close to us in our space that we can count on to care for us and to care with us for others, no matter what happens around us. They form the foundation of huge social building blocks, things like family. All of these things have their roots in our sexuality. So it's a very important contributor to our experience of things like happiness or fulfillment as human beings. That also means, though, that if it's violated or dealt with in broken ways, it can shatter those same kinds of things. So it's very, very powerful. Our sexuality, like our dignity, is something that we need to nurture because of its great worth. Sexual violence, which is, among other things, any way that another person can sexualize and exploit a relationship with someone else, can undermine all of that and even shatter it. So it's not okay. I realize that this is a big topic, and I know that it might be difficult for some of us to even listen to somebody talk about it. My hope is that these thoughts can help all of us to imagine ways of relating that guard and that nurture the precious gift of dignity we all bear, and that also guard and nurture the beautiful and complex gift of our sexuality, and that motivate us to seek resources, support if we need it, point us toward others toward those things as well. Sexual violence is not okay. There is support here in this community for you if that's something you're experiencing or you want to learn more about or you need to heal from. We're listening. Booth is here because we believe that the choices we make as human beings can make the world a better place. The choices we make around how we relate to one another as sexual beings, as human beings, are part of that. I hope this can be a helpful part of that journey. We'll chat again soon. Peace for now. Bye.